Well, welcome. Welcome to this evening's talk on meditation and intuition. And I want to talk twofold. I want to talk a little bit about how meditation develops the intuition, a little bit of the theory, I suppose. And then I want to talk about how you can specifically use your meditation if you're seeking intuitive guidance, how you can sort of go about that. So quite a practical talk. So when we meditate, we're using our will, and we're using our will to connect our conscious mind to the universal consciousness. We are connecting through to our higher mind, through into that higher triangle or our higher self. We're connecting our personality vehicle to our soul, if you like. And the intuitive messages that come through from our higher Buddhic nature, which is part of that higher triangle, that higher self. And when we do this, when we spend time in meditation, I think of my soul as being in constant meditation. So I think of it as it has its own sort of constant meditation. It's in tune with the universal consciousness, as if the universe is meditating. And when my personality chooses to go into meditation, I just join that rhythm of my soul, okay? And I join into the rhythm of the universe. And you know that when we meditate, we go into a different dimension. We have a different awareness of time and space, and in that dimension it has a different language, and the language of that dimension, if you like, is the intuitive language. Now, just before I talk a little bit more, just to be really clear, when I talk about the intuition, what do I mean? Okay, when you it's difficult to use words because the intuition works more symbolically, more subjectively. Words are more the language of the lower vehicle, the personality, or the lower mind. So it's difficult to describe the intuition using words, but it is abstract and symbolic. I would say more the feeling nature. The Buddhic nature does tap into our ability to feel. So sometimes the intuition, it might not be, in fact, it won't arrive in your mind and have the same quality as your usual thoughts. It'll have a different quality. It won't be something that you ponder on and work out and analyze in the way that you normally use your mind. It tends to arrive more as a flash of a complete understanding or a big picture or a realization presented in a way that you're lost for words. You can't explain at that time, but there's a sense of wholeness. The intuition, we have a sense that it's totally irrefutable. We can't explain why we know that, but we know it to be true. We know it to be true, even if we don't understand it, even if it takes us years to understand it. So it's a different language. So if you're getting thoughts in the way you're used to your mind thinking, deeper meditation, that's not what I mean by intuitive guidance, by intuitive wisdom. No, it has a different quality. Sometimes it depends on your soul will try and find often images or symbols that speak to you. Okay, so it might present something in a way that you're more likely to cotton on to it, whereas it might, someone else that might not ring so true for them. So it's something that people often talk about it almost being visceral, being a gut feeling, because it's not in the usual language of the mind. And the soul often uses the body in this way, especially as the channels start to clear, to speak intuitively. So when we do meditate, we take our will and we spend this time, we set aside this time, and we disconnect from our usual reality and we go into an inner reality. And when we do that, we align with our soul, we connect with our soul, with its natural rhythm, and we build that antakarana, we build that rainbow bridge between the personality and the soul. And we build a wider, more open, clearer bridge, if you like. So the messages, the intuitive messages, the more we meditate, the more deeply we meditate, the clearer they become. It's like learning that other language. It starts to come through a lot clearer. And it will eventually start to open that bridge so that that bridge is open even in our normal life, even when we're not in meditation. That intuitive wisdom still comes through, and eventually we will live by it. Okay, and this is it's a gradual process. It just becomes a natural progression from predominantly using the intellect to using the intuition. There'll always be times when you choose to use your intellectual mind or your lower mind in a more concrete, objective, logical way. But there is this increasing use of something that's very hard to explain to anybody else. Okay, and so this is why this talk is a challenge. Okay. Alice Bailey writes, this is a lovely little book, From the Intellect to the Intuition. And she writes, she speaks about meditation, especially meditation for the Western mind. Okay, so we are unique in the West in that our lower minds especially have often been trained through education, through schooling. And this is increasingly happening in the East. But what we find in the West, well, not just the West, but what we find is that often the intellect, overtraining the intellect, the overuse of the intellect in the lower mind can be a barrier to true understanding. So she talks about the mind as the slayer of the real. So we get in the West, we overthink things. We overuse that analytical problem solving way of thinking, and we're less inclined just to open and go, do you know what? I don't know. And bring it on. Do you know? And so and that is part of, we had to develop the mind, and that's something that as a race had to happen. But what's happening now is we're losing some of our intuitive capacity, our capacity to tune into this aspect of our higher mind and tune into the soul because of this overdevelopment. So what she speaks of, she said, typically in the West, we're developing what she calls the occult knower. Okay. And she was saying typically in the West, where a lot of the Vedic teachings or the yogic teachings, the sutras, the Vedantas have come, the teaching tended to be toward illuminated mystics in the East. I mean, that's very generalized, but what she says is, one, the occult knower seeks to come to enlightenment through knowing God, okay, through an understanding of God or universal consciousness, if you don't like the term God. And the mystic comes to enlightenment through the love of God. So there's almost an approach through the heart, through the head. And what she's suggesting is that in the West, we need to develop a combination of bringing these two together. So bringing the occult, wanting to understand, that comes through the mind, with the mystical love of the heart. And she says this is the perfect union of knowledge and experience to produce true inner wisdom. And this is where you get a Western trained intellectual mind is opened up to an experience of something far greater. You could say universal consciousness. You align your own particular consciousness with something that is universal. In science, you might call it to the field or the infinite potential. And this enables the educated intellectual to develop into an intuitive knower. And it's bringing the heart, the head and the heart together. And that's suggested in the age of Aquarius to really move forward into Aquarius, into an age of service. We have to do this. We have to bring the head and the heart together, and particularly in the way that we meditate. And this is what I'm talking about tonight. So what I want to, so I think of meditation, I suppose, as my daily appointment or my daily time with my soul, with universal consciousness, and an opportunity to open up in a way that my mind doesn't necessarily, is not necessarily called to during the day. But as you practice meditation, increasingly you don't have to use your will to do that. It just starts to infiltrate into your life, and that has been my experience. So we can think of consciousness as this, of the universal consciousness, which is omnipresent, all-knowing. You could call it God, Logos, Spirit, whatever names you want to give it, the field in science. And then we have our awareness, or our particular consciousness. So the amount of awareness of that universal that we are able to hold or to understand, or to use our minds as an instrument to focus. And then we have our perception. And what our perception is, what we give our attention to. So the perception tends to be the lower mind, but associated with the personality, because our perception has filters, and it filters out vast amounts of information. And depending on our perception of the world, this creates the thoughts that run in our mind. So the thoughts that run in your mind depend upon the particular lens through which you view reality. Okay, so this is why they're like conditioned response. They're like your personality, if you like. So this perceiver is part of our emotional nature is woven into, and we react habitually to events. We use reason and logic to measure truth and reality. And this is the background state of our mind where thoughts are born. Okay, so this is how I suppose our mind works normally. But when we go into meditation, or we deeply visualize or bring our mind to, excuse me, a point of focus and concentration, and we quieten our ego and we quieten down these usual thoughts, usually by focusing on something, whether it's a mantra, whether it's a candle, whether it's the breath, whatever you use, you bring your usual mind into a point of focus. And by doing that, by bringing all the thoughts into a point of focus, we become aware of another state of mind, which we would call the observer or the silent witness. Now, the beauty of the observer is the observer has no self-identity to protect. So our ego mind, that is the thoughts that run in our mind, is constantly protecting our view of ourselves. Whereas when we go into meditation, this silent observer, this silent witness, doesn't have any self-identity to protect. They're not actively engaged with the emotions. So they can view things as they are and accept them as they are. The silent observer thinks more in abstract concepts or universal truths and symbols, and is immune to bias and conditioning. So the silent observer, this aspect of our higher self, can see things as they truly are. So this is like a vehicle to see truth. So the mind as observer can register experiences that are totally unknown, movements of energy, ideas that we've never come across before, that the personality would probably reject, that logical processing analytical mind would reject. But the silent observer, this other state we go into in meditation, accepts. And this is where the intuition comes in. This is where the flow of intuition comes in. So it's through a practice of learning to focus the mind in meditation. So in Alice Bailey's book, she talks about, actually, I think it might be in this book. This is a book. I don't know if this is still in print. This is probably the best book on meditation I've ever read. I don't know if you can still get it on Amazon or maybe Marketplace. I know Christmas Humphries is no longer alive, and his comes through from the Buddhist meditation teachings. But what he points out is that what most people call meditation is just the first stage. And Alice Bailey points this out as well, the first stage of meditation. So when you're bringing your mind to a point of focus or concentration, when you're focusing on the breath, when you're using a mantra, whatever you're using, you might be using a seed thought, you might be using an image. You're bringing your mind to that point of focus. And by doing that, quietening the mind and bringing it to that point of focus, that enables you to become aware of the silent observer. Because you become aware that there are thoughts still running through your mind. So even though I'm focused on the breath or the mantra, I'm aware that thoughts are still coming into my mind and moving through my mind. Those background thoughts that usually run our mind, that are usually foremost in our mind. But because I'm focused, I'm not giving them my awareness. I'm not giving them my concentration. And the silent observer is, if those thoughts are just running through your mind, but you can observe them, who is observing them? And this we can hold as a concept in our mind, in our concrete lower mind, or we can experience it as an experiential knowing. So it often takes a little while of meditating before you suddenly realize, I'm not my thoughts. Not as an intellectual construct, but as an absolute knowing. I am not those thoughts that I see come into my mind, move through and pass by. And many of them are quite familiar to me. Many of them are quite useful. They help me to function in this reality. But I am not my thoughts. I am that which can observe them. So meditation gives you a taste, I suppose, of who you truly are, because the silent observer is not caught up in ego identification, is not caught up in thinking in the normal way. The silent observer is linked to the higher self, is basically you stepping into your higher self. And so you can simply observe the mind at work. You can observe the thoughts and you can know that you are not. And once you know you are not those thoughts, what naturally starts to happen in your life, even when you're not meditating, is you start to claim back the power of your mind, because you know that the thoughts, if you're not your thoughts and you are an observer that channels your conscious awareness, you can choose what thoughts you give your awareness to. So we start to get to the capacity where I can recognize a thought that regularly comes into my mind and just is not I know it's not true. I know it doesn't serve me, so I don't give it any attention. I don't give it any merit. I just let it pass through. And eventually those thoughts lose their power, their ego thoughts. And so do you see how by regularly practicing meditation, you develop that capacity to step back from your everyday thoughts? You'll never ever clear your mind of them. Yes, your mind will become more peaceful, and that's when the silent observer, your awareness of the silent observer arises, but you will never clear your mind of thoughts. But you can step back from them and they lose their power. So that's the first stage of meditation, is learning to do that. And that can take years, because those thoughts that usually run in your mind are enticing. They know just how to grab us. They have deep grooves and they're familiar to us. They're the way we usually view reality and deal with the world. So we're comfortable with them. Even if they're negative, we're still comfortable with them. So it takes some courage and it takes some will to practice meditation, because your ego, those usual thoughts, will fight it. It doesn't want to lose its identity. It doesn't want you to step into a place where that identity is not real. And so the second stage of meditation, or what is called true meditation, is where you have developed this capacity to step back. You can go into that silent witness, that quiet place inside. And from there, you can just go inward into a stage we call contemplation. There's no longer a need to focus on the breath or on the mantra or the seed thought. You can just go into a deep place. And this is where, if you like, we're going higher up into that Buddhic nature. We're going up into the higher self. And it's a strange thing, because if you try to do it, you won't do it, because it's the ego lower mind that's trying to do it. And this is where it's quite hard to teach meditation, because I have to say to people, don't try to do it. Allow it to happen. But as soon as you start thinking about it happening, it's not going to happen. So it is a frustrating. It tends to be something it just happens of itself, and you go, that's what I have to do. And you understand the surrender involved, because it is a surrender. Think of that beautiful bridge opening as a surrender, rather than something that's difficult and challenging and hard that you have to work at. It's natural to connect to your soul, okay? And so that place of contemplation is a very powerful place to be, because you are connecting to universal consciousness. So in science, they talk about you're connecting to the infinite potential, the universal field of all knowledge, of all infinite potentials. So you can tune into any wisdom. Any wisdom can come through when you're in that deep place of contemplation. So when you're meditating, sometimes if you have a particular problem or something you're seeking further guidance or wisdom on, if you allow yourself to go deep into meditation, and you spend quite a lot of time in that first concentration, focus time, until you can just go deep. And then in that deep place, you can just ask the question that you seek answers to. And then you've got to be careful not to then flip into your analytical mind that's looking for answers and solutions to the problem. You don't. You ask, and then you surrender, and you remain as open as you can. And what you'll find is what will come in, sometimes you'll get it straight away. And it won't be in words, it might be in a symbol, it might be a feeling, it might... I've had it in all sorts of strange ways. And sometimes it can open to a full mystical experience. It doesn't have to, but sometimes it will, a full experience of love and connection to all that is. but you can, as long as you just accept that whatever happens is as it's meant to happen, as it's meant to be. And sometimes it won't come then. It will come later that night or the next night in your dreams. It will come, someone will say something to you, or you'll happen to pick up something, or you'll get an email, you'll read something, and suddenly you're like, oh, yeah, that's it. Or for me, if I'm somewhere quiet and connected to nature, and I'm just walking along, not particularly focused on what it is I'm seeking, it will just arrive. It's like I have cleared space for the download of the information. And it's about being open and clear. And this is very much why we need to bring the heart into it, because it's not just being open in your mind, it's being open in your whole being, including your heart. And the Buddhists, when the Buddhists meditate, they talk about thinking in the heart. And when they say thinking, they touch here. Okay, because when we move up into the highest aspects of intuition, it has a quality, a heartfelt quality, an emotional feeling quality that is characteristic of this thinking in the heart. So I just want to share briefly a little bit of the science around the the brain-heart connection. Brain, as we develop spiritually, our brain becomes more of a perceptive vehicle for the soul. Okay. So in modern science, they talk about coming into a place of heart coherence. So what they have found is our heart is emitting an electromagnetic field, and it goes out in the shape of a Taussian field, about half, most people about half a foot right round, especially this part of your body. I mean, you have a field of energy fields around your body, but this is the one that's particularly coming from your heart. And the quality or the frequency of that heart emission will depend upon your emotional state. So when we go into meditation, we usually are in a very calm emotional state. We're in a nice environment, we've calmed ourselves down. And so we're in a very heart open, often receptive state. So this heart electromagnetic field is emitting what they have emitting all the time. And that's what you pick up when you come in contact with other people. And I've spoken about this before. You feel their heart energy. So they might say they're fine, but you think, no, you're not. And you can feel that. So the heart is very much the organ in the body that's associated with the intuition. And what they found in science is about 40,000 brain-like cells they call neurites in the heart. They found the heart has its own intelligence, its own memory. It has the capacity for super learning. Okay, so they're starting to find that the heart is where the messages, the intuitive messages from the world come into our body, and the heart relays those to the brain that then comprehends and perceives the world. So the information, we are first and foremost, the information coming into our bodies, if you like, is intuitive, and then we make sense of it with our brain. Now we've also got our brain, depending on what sort of state of mind and state of being we're in, our brain will be emitting brain waves at a certain frequency. So me talking to you now, because I'm using my brain, well, I'm probably in quite a mixed state because I'm using two different parts of me, but the part of my brain that's analyzing and thinking about what I am processing, what I am talking to you about, I'm sort of in low beta waves coming into alpha waves, becoming more creative. So as we calm down, if those beta waves get really high, if we go into a high frequency beta, that is when we're feeling really stressed, we're feeling overloaded, our brain is starting to misfire, and we get brain fog and we can't remember anything, and we're going zzz, Okay, when we drop down into the alpha, we're starting to get more creative, we're calming down. And then if we can drop our brain waves down even lower into a theta brainwave state, which is the brainwave state that they find regular meditators spend when they're in meditation, their brainwaves are slower. They're of this theta continuum. And what they find is theta brainwave state, not only is it a very good for your brain and for your whole nervous system, for your health, they also find that people who spend a lot of time in theta brainwave states can achieve higher states of consciousness. They seem to be able to create and access memories far beyond what they can normally do. They seem to be able to bring through creative ideas far beyond what they can normally do. Are you starting to see that the intuitive information that we can tap into seems to be coming through when we're in this theta brainwave state? Now, we spend a few moments in a theta brainwave state every day. It's that state just before you fall asleep, when you're moving from being awake to falling asleep. Okay, you spend just a moment or two. When we go into, say, a deep relaxation, like we do in yoga, or we go into meditation or prayer or contemplation, creative visualization, we take ourselves down into this theta brainwave state. It's interesting, I was reading yesterday that children under the age of 13 spend most of their time in a theta brainwave state. And this is why they're so relaxed and creative. They can learn like really super fast. They almost have higher capacities. And as we go through those teenage years and develop into adults, we spend less and less time in a theta brainwave state unless we choose to regularly do relaxations, regularly pray, meditate. Okay, and this theta brainwave state, when it comes into, when we go into this theta brainwave state, there's a coherence between this heart electromagnetic field and the brainwave state that brings us into a beautiful, remember Ted talked about coming into a vertical alignment with your soul. So this is science backing up what we already know in ancient wisdom teachings and what we experience in meditation. So when we go deep into meditation, we're coming into this vertical alignment. So our heart is coming into coherence with our brain waves, and it's creating a beautiful channel. And a channel not just for our etheric body and our chakras and our physical health, but a channel for this intuitive information to come through. And this is why I say to people, when you go into meditation, you can't just meditate with your mind. You've got to have your heart involved. And it might simply be a heartfelt desire to have some peace, to feel that this meditation, that you trust the meditation. In many meditators, there's a humbleness that develops. For myself, I have come to love and cherish my time of meditation. And I think just by having that attitude, that opens my heart before I even start the process of going into meditation. So what I would say to people who become a little bit polarized in their mind, you've got to bring the heart in. And you will know that if you are emotionally, if you're not in the best heart space emotionally, it's quite hard to meditate. Okay, it's hard to settle. It's hard to go into a deep meditation. And what I would suggest, and what I find happens, which is a wonderful thing that has developed over the years, if I have tension in my body, especially if it's emotional, as I go into meditation, there's a tension in your solar plexus, there's a tension in your body. I now just let it go. I just release it before I even bother to go into the meditation. And sometimes it's a real emotional release. Sometimes it's tears, and sometimes it's like, oh, there, it's gone. Now I can meditate. And so that is a natural part of meditation as well. And we can't open up to these higher states if we've got ego, emotional upset sitting there in our solar plexus. Do you see, it can't flow? That vertical alignment can't flow. And so I guess what I'm saying is really meditation, yes, definitely will open up your intuition, but you have to trust it. You have to value it. You have to heartfelt involve your whole being in the meditation. It's not just something you do with your mind. Your whole self, your whole being meditates. And, you know, I don't completely fully understand it, but there's definitely this heart-mind connection is important if you're seeking the intuitive knower, if you're seeking that intuitive understanding that you can get in deeper contemplative stages of meditation. So I'm going to leave that there because that's quite a lot to digest, and you can ask me questions after the meditation. And I'm going to ask you to forget about all of that. Let it go deep into your mind and work away. And we're going to come now into the group meditation. Okay. So just let all of that go. And remember, for this meditation, for you to gain as much as you can from it, and for it to be as effective as an aspect of service, you need to be in as relaxed and calm place as you can be. So in terms of your heart, I want you to feel what the Buddhists call loving kindness for yourself. Okay, so fill your heart with compassion, with gratitude, with a feeling of loving kindness. So this experience of meditation will be as it is, and I want you to stay with this loving kindness. So we're going to begin by coming together as a group. So simply have your intention to join with the others who are watching this live, and those who are watching the recording, to come into alignment together. And we're going to bring our hearts into alignment and open our hearts through this affirmation of love. So either listen to me or repeat it quietly to yourself. In the center of all love I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Now I invite you to gently close your eyes. Make sure you're sitting comfortably with your spine reasonably upright, feet on the floor. And I just want to ground your energy. So I want you to imagine that you're sending roots, or you're sending energy down to connect with the earth, down through your feet or through the base of your spine. And now I want to come into this present moment. So just be aware of your body sitting on the chair. Be aware of the clothes on your skin. And open your awareness to any sounds in the room. Now we're going to take this awareness inward. So I invite you to connect with your breath. And you're just going to follow the breath, watching it come into your body and watching it leave. If it's comfortable to, breathe in through your nose. And just feel with each breath that your body is relaxing a little deeper. With each breath, you are opening a channel down through the center of you, taking the breath right down into your belly. So just keep a gentle focus on the breath. It's not forced, it's just resting on the breath. And in your heart, know that you can trust this process. Know that you can trust the breath to take you down into a quiet place. So I think of the breath as taking my hand and taking me down into a quiet, deeply still place within me. So continue to keep this focus on the breath. If you find your mind becomes distracted by the thoughts that are running in your mind, as soon as you realize, just come back to the breath, but come back with loving kindness. So just allow the thoughts to come into your mind, to pass through your mind, keeping a gentle focus on the breath. So just continue to bring your mind back to the breath whenever it wanders. Now I want you to bring your focus to the very center of your chest. And imagine that as you breathe, you're breathing into your heart center. And it is gently opening. So you can think of the heart as a beautiful lotus bud. And as you breathe, this little bud beautifully opens. And I want you to have the intention that through your heart you can connect to your soul, to your higher self, to your Buddhic nature. And now I invite you to imagine that you are bringing white or violet, purple or gold light, and it is pouring down from your highest self through the crown of your head and down through all of the major energy centers of your body that are aligned and associated with your spine, creating a beautiful flow of energy and bringing them into a perfect alignment. As this light flows in through your crown, imagine that your heart center acts as a vessel to receive and start to distribute this light throughout your physical body. So see or feel your whole physical body filling with this purifying, cleansing, illuminating light. Strengthening your physical body and your immune system, bringing calm to your heart and your emotional nature, illuminating your mind. Bringing your whole being into alignment. Now allow this light to flow out into your etheric energy body, the aura or energy field that surrounds your physical body. So this lighted love flows in through your crown to your heart and is distributed throughout your physical vehicle and out to radiate out. And let this light radiate now out to fill your home, so it touches all living creatures. As you fill your home, so fill your street and your neighborhood with this light. Feel it radiating out. Now continue to allow it to radiate even further, to fill the town or the city in which you live. And feel it connect with the lights of all of the members of this group meditation, so that our lights become one light and we can fill this whole nation with light. Now imagine the light filling this whole part of the world. And slowly radiating out to fill this hemisphere. And then the southern hemisphere, so that the whole world is encompassed with light. Now imagine that you can see our whole planet from space, and you can see this beautiful light surrounding it like an aura. And see it flowing down into our planet, bringing deep healing and restoring the balance in nature. Purifying, cleansing the airs, the waters, the ozone layer, so that our planet is healed and restored. See all animal and plant life flourishing, and mankind coming into a true right relationship with these kingdoms. Now see the light flowing into the hearts and minds of all of mankind, consciously and unconsciously, bringing peace, igniting the will to good, so that each and every one of us can establish right relations within ourselves, with others, within our families, our communities, our nations, and between nations, between all of humankind, so that collectively we may lift our awareness and our collective consciousness to pave the way to live in peace and harmony. Visualize these energies unifying, eliminating all divisions within humanity, healing and transforming human consciousness, and establishing these right human relations. See this light as a vehicle of peace. Now continue to hold a space in your heart and be open to this energy and let it radiate out. Let us join with all groups in the world who are working with light in this way. And just continue to hold a space to let this light radiate out. Connect in your heart with the love you have for this planet and for its people. And your desire for peace. now I invite you to repeat the word prayer or the great invocation with me. Pausing between each stanza just to imagine the words playing out. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Lovely. I'm now going to give you the opportunity to unmute yourself if you want to. If you have any questions or any comments or anything you want to add, that would be lovely. Just while you're having a think, I sent you an email, and actually I'll share a screen. This week, particularly powerful week, as it's the 75th anniversary of the droppings of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So a lot of movements, a lot of groups around the world, particularly focused on meditating for peace and coming together to meditate for peace. I wasn't planning to be awake at midnight last night, but I was. And that was the exact time that the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima 75 years ago. And there were ceremonies in Japan with a lot of the Japanese people involved in those ceremonies, and people were invited all around the world to join. And then Nagasaki is, I think I sent you an email. I can't remember. I think it's 2 o'clock in the morning. You might not be up for that one, but you can always have the intention that you will join anyway. And there is a global movement to invite people to spend a minute of silence at 9 p.m. every evening, called the Global Silent Minute. I've just put the name of the website up on the screen there. And this is just, we know the power of group intention, the power of group meditation. So just 9 p.m. every night, just for a minute, you just focus on envisaging, finding it in your heart, your desire for world peace. And so that's something that we can do. Between now and the International Day of Peace in September, there's all sorts of meditations and preparations. So there's a couple of websites there, the worldpeace.org and the United Religions Initiative, if you want to be involved in any of those. So I've just put those up there as further resources. But this week, you know, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. We're seeing a lot of rise in conflict. We're kind of exercising the demons of mankind, if you like. But you've got to remember that there are a lot of people working as what I would call, they don't often even acknowledge themselves as light workers, but they are working in service to mankind. And many are working now online and connecting in this way. And they're working for peace. They're working for a better world. They're working with the energies of Aquarius, and they're working in groups. So if you focus on the mass media and the news, you might see a particular view of the world. If you start tuning into these organizations that are working, you start to see a different view of the world, and I believe a more balanced view, because as the conflict and the darkness rises, this is an indication. It's in response to a rising of the number of people working in the light, working to make a positive change. So don't be disillusioned. Everything is as it is meant to be. And we are all called to play our part in that plan. And quite often deep in meditation is where you will come into contact with starting to get a feel for initially and increasingly a clarification of what your part in a greater plan for humanity might be. And you know, it's like a symphony. We need every note. It doesn't sound right unless everyone's sounding their note, and that note is the soul note. So as increasingly people sound that soul note, that symphony is starting to really shake up and make a difference. It's a beautiful symphony. So I'll keep on just giving you little opportunities, and something will resonate with you and you think, yeah, I can do a minute at 9 p.m. every day. I can do that. I'm going to do that as part of my way of making a difference. So I'll always share whatever comes my way, because quite often I think that's part of my role, is to distribute, okay, to network in this way and share. Now, has anybody got any questions? You all seem to be muted. Michael, let me just check. Oh yeah, you can unmute yourself. Oh, hang on. You're muted. Try that.
First thing, I just wanted to feedback. That was a brilliant talk, and you covered really every aspect of again, a really difficult subject. So totally agree with that. And I would also kind of commend you saying that treat the media as you would those thoughts whizzing round, vying for your attention, because the sooner you can do that, the clearer things will get.
Yeah.
And one other thing I just wanted to add is that as you kind of take meditation seriously, it's like you have to demonstrate your own will, and it's like test number one is half-heartedness won't do. Yeah. And so in my case, for example, the way you seat is called the asana, and one of my kind of processes was to stay absolutely still and relaxed for say 15 or 30 minutes, and the battle of wills was enormous, and it's a real struggle. So don't underestimate how much opposition your kind of personality and your body and everything will start to fight, because it doesn't like being told what to do, and it doesn't like not having control over you. And so when you say, I am going to meditate 15 minutes or 30 minutes and not move and not have any distractions, it will fight you tooth and nail until eventually it will just kind of capitulate. And that's when you've kind of got your driving license.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that point very clear, because that kind of first hurdle, I think, is one where probably huge numbers of people fail because they say, oh, this is too difficult. But it's like, for me personally, there's a line in the Bible that says something like, God is not mocked. And it's like, you can't lie to yourself. If your intentions are not total and pure, you won't get there. And nothing less than that will do. So it's kind of this faith and absolute sincerity. That's the only passport to get where you're trying to go. That's all I wanted to add.
Brilliant. Yeah, and thank you for that. And that is completely so. I think sometimes, because I've been meditating a long time, I forget what it was like when I first started. And often it takes years to settle into a really regular pattern of meditation. There can be a lot of ego battle. And you're right, it requires an act of will. But after a time, your body stops trying to interfere. Your mind stops trying to grab your attention. It's like the ego says, okay, fair dues, you're meditating. I'm going to quieten down now. And that's when you really start to get the opportunity. And eventually it becomes something that you dearly love, cherish. There's nothing in my life now that stops me meditating, not even illness, nothing, because I cherish it so very deeply. Yeah.
And also now, if I go to meditate, it's also the most comfortable position imaginable. Because what was a monumental fight at first is now, okay, that's my relaxed state.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Lovely. Is there anybody else got anything they want to add? Let me have a look. You're very quiet. Lovely. Okay, well, I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you very much. And we've got a treat next week. We've got Finian is going to talk to us on the Kabbalah. Okay, I don't know much about the Kabbalah at all, but we're going to, it's an introductory talk, looking at it from the perspective as how the Kabbalah can be a key to your intuition. So following along this series of talks of the different ways of accessing this amazing wisdom that's right there for us. So go and have a lovely evening, and thank you very much. Namaste.